This is Martin Giles of the Guildford Dragon News, and today I'm with Josh Bigmore, the leader of Guildford Borough Council. Josh, welcome to the Guildford Dragon.
Hi Martin, good afternoon.
Okay, so there's lots to talk about. Let's get straight into it. The story of the moment is this repayment of £2.7 million back to central government of right to buy receipts from council houses that have been sold. Now you have, together with Caroline Reeves, joint leaders of the, you're the leadership of the current coalition. You have apologised, but shouldn't heads roll?
I think it's far too early to make that conclusion. We've set up a working group that meets for the first time on Monday to look at how this happened, and look at all aspects of it, the internal communication, the reporting. If anyone is found to have behaved from a councillor point of view or an officer point of view that causes issues for code of conduct or disciplinary, then that's something we'll look at. But it's not my view at the moment that is definitely the case. So I think we need to let the review run its course. We're also having KPMG as an independent auditor look at the process and let that run its course before we jump to any conclusions. Although I can appreciate the passion that this has caused. It is embarrassing for Guildford Borough Council, and as you said, myself and Councillor Reeves have apologised unreservedly, as has James Whiteman, on behalf of the organisation. And now I think it's time to just work out what went wrong. More importantly, stop it going wrong again as quickly as possible, because this is an ongoing problem. We are receiving right to buy receipts all the time, and we need to have a plan in place, robust plan in place to spend them, so we don't have to return any more. And that is happening as we speak.
Okay, now you were under the previous setup when Caroline Reeves was the leader. You were the lead councillor for finance. If you'd have known in 2019 that this had happened, could you have done anything about it, or would the money still have needed to have been repaid?
So there's a repayment that goes to government every quarter. So there was a repayment of £250,000 plus interest at the very beginning of April that was due before the election, so the previous administration. The next payment was due at the very beginning of August, so into our administration, so 2 months into our administration, sorry, the very beginning of July. It's up to you to think whether we could have spent £3 million on property from May the 6th to the end of June. Or we could have built a property in that time, without a plan to do it. I think it's unlikely we could have done anything about that quarter's return. Obviously, had we known the issue, we'd have had a damn good go at doing something about it. But obviously, had we known about the issue at the time, the receipts that happened in subsequent quarters would have had more time to come up with a plan. So yes, had we known at the time, we could have done something about the number, but some money would have definitely been returned. So I don't think it's feasible for us to have been able to do something in such a short space of time after being elected.
Okay, and to have done something, you would have needed, as I understand it, to have identified sites and the other funding that would need to be used from the council's own pocket.
Yes. But you could buy homes on the open market, so you could buy property. But yes, I assume you've bought a house and you know how long it takes to go through that process. It's not overnight. And yes, you can only use right to buy receipts for 30p in the pound. So you have to add another. So to spend £1 million, you have to add another 2 and a bit, 2.3 to that to enable to spend it. But we do have those reserves in the HRA, so that's less of an issue.
Okay, now council houses are, I think, for many people, they're key to as part of the Guildford housing problem, and for many, all homes in Guildford are unaffordable to buy and will remain so. New private homes that might be built under the local plan, they're still not going to be affordable and probably will be mainly bought by people moving into the borough. Isn't the lack of council housing construction the main problem? Not right to buy, actually. I mean, in the decade between 2005 and 2015, we only constructed 19 council houses, and we sold on average about less than 15 a year. Isn't it the lack of construction that's the real problem?
I think it's both. I think you're right. And I think those 19 properties were built in 2015. I don't think there was a property built by the council from 2000 to 2014.
Yes,
I think there have been just under 200 built, you know, in since 2014 to date. So yes, it's not enough. And right to buy, you know, is another problem on top, but the underlying problem of not building enough is there. I think, you know, we have now made a commitment at Guildford Park Road, removing a multi-storey car park to increase the housing density on there. And that will be an HRA a council house led development. So it will be, you know, a lot more properties on there, and we will look to do the same at Bright Hill. Wayside is another. So that, you know, there are plans afoot, but you are right that the council's record of building properties has been woeful over the past 2 decades.
Okay, just to explain, I don't have the figures post 2015. I have asked for them, but that's why I mentioned that particular set.
Sure.
So is the system wrong? And if it is, you know, the system that of council house construction and the policies around that, and if it is, what can you do about it?
Well, I mean, it's at the end of the day, land costs what land costs. You know, buildings cost what buildings cost, and that's what, you know, and council housing is not viable. So unless people are willing to fund it, you know, it's not going to develop itself. So yes, there is a fundamental problem with housing. You know, obviously the government is supporting Wayside with a 50 million grant from the Housing Infrastructure Fund to make some of these developments more viable, but on their own, you know, it requires investment and government money to provide council housing, and that's not been national policy.
So is it national policy that's the problem? Local policy?
I mean, we could ultimately we could choose on our own to fund and subsidise council houses as a council, which is what we may choose to do as a council. But that's not a decision I can make, you know, unilaterally. I may be the leader, but we do have full council. So when we come to talk about the mix of property we're going to put on Guildford Park Road as a council, as part of a housing strategy for the next decade, we will decide whether there's affordable rent, whether some of them we sell privately, you know, whether some of it's shared ownership. You know, that will be a decision where we decide, you know, what we want to invest of our own funds into the various buckets that we can provide. But that's something very much. We have a brand new head of housing started last week, and his first job is basically the next decade's housing strategy about what we're doing with these sites.
Okay. Now, many voted for you in 2019, or your party, especially in the villages around Guildford, because they were expecting you to conduct a review of the local plan. What happened?
Well, yeah, we get asked this a lot. So to be clear, you know, we campaigned before the local plan was adopted. If you remember, the local plan was adopted a week before the election in a very surprising and some would say controversial move. So obviously then our options became a lot more limited. The council instructed a completely independent barrister to have a look at what options we had. Unfortunately, none. 3 judicial reviews were lost. So we were left with an adopted plan that is sound. You know, so our focus now is investigating the timing and the opportunity for a formal local plan review. It has to be carried out within 5 years of adoption, and focusing on the development management policies, which are just about to come back out for consultation, to make sure what we're building is of the highest quality and the best design.
But there are rumours now of some sort of review. Is there any substance to those rumours?
There has to be a local plan review completed within 5 years. So by 2024, we have to review the local plan. Now, in order to, there are things that can promote an early review, and I think we could, because of them. You know, there's changes in infrastructure like the A3 not coming forward will have implications on the delivery of some of the strategic sites. So that gives us grounds for a review. The changes in, you know, post-COVID, you know, are our assumptions about retail correct that are in the local plan? So I think there is evidence that says we could review the local plan should we wish. However, we've all seen the headlines about from government saying build, build, build. We've all seen the algorithm for housing that says Guildford's housing number will go from 562 to 782. So that's finding another 230 homes a year. So there are risks inherent with a local plan review, as well as obviously the hopes of everyone that we can remove some allocations of sites in the Greenbelt and shift them back into the town. So for me, it's very much a balance of probability and about when we should trigger a local plan review, and it's not clear. I think we need to get some proper advice, because we need to, on one hand, I think we need to assume that the housing number will go up. So far, we've failed the delivery test, because the first year of the plan, we haven't delivered the housing that we said we were going to deliver. So there's no evidence there to say we don't need such a big buffer, for instance. We're yet to see the evidence that John Rigg's been working so hard with on the town centre master plan to show the town centre can deliver some sites such that we can switch and delivery to the town. That should be coming imminently. On the flip side of that, we and other councils are challenging the ONS, the Office of National Statistics, because the way they treat student numbers seems to be odd. That may give us some headway. So there are a lot of competing pros and cons about the local plan review. And what I don't want to do is review the local plan and have to find more sites in the Greenbelt, Martin. I don't think anyone wants that. So I think we need to be very careful when we trigger that review.
Okay, now you've mentioned Greenbelt sites, so I'm going to put you on the spot now. Are you personally, you're the leader of the council, are you personally in favour of developing Wisley, Blackwell Farm and Gosden Hill?
I think my personal view is largely irrelevant. They are adopted in the local plan and largely out of my control now. The Taylor Wimpey are forging ahead with their application, and the council will deal with it on its merits as it does with any planning application. I think
you're swerving the question there. If the local plan constraint wasn't there, would you want to develop those places?
If there wasn't a local plan, would I choose to develop in the Greenbelt? If I could develop in the town, I would not choose to develop in the Greenbelt, Martin. I would choose to develop in the town.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned these brownfield sites in the town, and there's one down at Guildford Park by the railway line too. Is progress being made with those?
Yes, absolutely. So Guildford Park Road, as I said, we took the decision to remove a multi-storey car park so we could increase the housing, and the master plan team are looking at that as we speak, with Bright Hill shortly to follow. So I'm assured there'll be a new planning application in October on Guildford Park Road, and one to follow probably 3 months later on Bright Hill. There is another site that has potential, which is the council offices at Millmead. Post-COVID, that we're discussing closer working with Waverley. Do we need all that space? There's another potential site. The car park at Millbrook, it's a surface car park by the river. Maybe you just keep the car park and you build on top of it. I don't know. There are a lot of opportunities, and we're just awaiting the evidence from the master plan team to say, what are the order and what can we actually do in the town. But there's a lot of work going in, and I suggest you schedule an interview with Councillor Rigg in a month or so, and he can give you some more details.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that. And going back to the local plan itself, I've never been able to get to the bottom of why the available constraints weren't used, i.e. the ones that were connected with the amount of green belt the borough had. Do you know why they weren't used?
I really don't know. That's a question you will have to ask those that constructed the local plan. All I know is that the local plan has been found sound by an inspector, survived 3 judicial reviews, and all attempts by us to try and do things with it. So we have that plan.
But aren't you interested to know why?
Yes, I am. Do I think I'll find out the real reason? Probably not.
Okay. And why don't you think you will?
Well, I'm not sure. I think with all these, with everything, there is a political choice. Political choices to be made, and why people make those political choices is up to the politicians to explain. And we can but guess.
Okay. Now, isn't the fact that the local, you've already alluded to some of these factors, but the local plan's already completely out of date, isn't it, in this post-Brexit pandemic struck situation? You've mentioned the population statistics and connected with students. They're not reliable, are they, anymore?
Well, I think. Well, I mean, to be fair, you base your plan on evidence, and as soon as you produce that evidence, it starts to go out of date. I think post-COVID, that evidence base may be wildly out of date. Do I think the trends, are there for us to say, actually, we now need to, the evidence, the situation we have now is going to be here for the future, or we need to wait a little while to see how things recover? I think it's probably best to wait. But yeah, I think some of the assumptions, and you've seen yourself that, with North Street development, that was a lot of retail on that in the local plan. It's obviously not needed. So that's something we will have to try and address through the planning procedure for the planning process for the new North Street development, that we don't want that retail.
Okay, thanks. So I now want to move on to the challenges you've got with the culture at the council. What are the main cultural issues you've identified at GBC? You came into power promising more openness, but is that the only issue?
I think what I've realised is the council is an incredibly complex conglomerate of very different services. From Meals on Wheels to collecting rubbish, from planning, to public safety. It does all manner of things, and it can, I think, even by officers' own admission, there is a certain silo where you've almost a collection of businesses that don't really have consistent theme of values running through them. So for me, I think that the corporate transformation we've gone through, called Future Guildford, has broken down a lot of those barriers between business, and I think it's very important that we have one corporate culture as a borough council. We're a community leader. We should act like it. I think that we need to treat all customers like paying customers. You all pay tax. You deserve to be treated like a loyal customer to the council. And I think having a consistency of service through a consistency of, customer service throughout all of the service is very important. I think, yes, openness and transparency, where there's something you don't like, raise it, and if you've made a mistake, stick your hand up, as we've done with the right to buy. It's as I said, it's embarrassing. These things, I'm not trying to downplay it. These happen in lots of organizations, issues like this. And I think the right thing to do is stick your hands up, apologize, and then come up with a solution and move forward. So I think there's quite a lot of work to do, because the council structure has evolved, to do all these services, and now we need to kind of bring it all back together and say, actually, what are the values that unite us? Because it doesn't really matter what service you provide. The values that you hold dear should be common through the authority. So we're doing a lot of work with the new corporate plan on the values. But
the council states its values on all its council papers, and one of them is to be the best council, and another one is for openness. But is that, I still don't, from your answer, I'm still not sure which are the main cultural issues I've identified other than openness. I mean, do you feel that there's a can-do culture at the council at the moment?
I think councils are risk averse by nature, and I think they have to be, because they are very publicly accountable. And I think there is
averse. They have to be risk averse, or do you mean?
I think they are. I think they've evolved risk averse because they get a lot of scrutiny. So I think it's unfair to say there's not a can-do culture or everything takes so long. It's just they have to be cognizant of an enormous amount of risk, and I think that scrutiny that the local authority is under sometimes inhibits people taking a chance. And I think we as councillors and the senior officers need to empower officers to say, look, we'll support you, because sometimes there is a reluctance to perhaps take a risk because of any potential downside. And I think we as a leadership team at the council, and that is the officers and the members, need to create that supportive environment where council officers feel supported to make those tough decisions.
Okay, but isn't actually the real skill that's required a very good analysis of risk, so that you know which ones are real and important and which ones are tolerable or can be mitigated?
Yes, and we look at all of those risks before we make any decision. But I think it's just having a consistency of approach, Martin. And I think that is where the council can be criticised, that there is not a consistent approach across departments or between people, and to be honest, across councillors as well. And I think it's just having that. What I would like is when you pick up the phone to ask the council something, you're not surprised by the answer. You kind of know what you're going to get. There's a consistency there. of support and of advice and of treatment. And I think that's we need to kind of embed that culture where everyone feels supported in risk. And if a risk does go wrong, it goes wrong, and that's life. I mean, we all take risk in everything we do.
Okay, well, you have identified a few more now, and you have said how you're going to some of the ways you intend to tackle them. I just want to give you a couple of examples now relating to openness.
Yeah.
Do you intend to continue inserting gagging clauses into your payoff agreements that prevent people who leave the council from talking about their time at the council?
We sometimes don't, and the other side sometimes does. I mean, all agreements when people leave the building are negotiated by their advisors and our advisors, and they're all unique. Irrespective of whether there's a confidentiality clause, there are some things we're just not allowed to say because of data protection. So, I mean, we comply with legal obligations. And sometimes what you call gagging clauses is just us not being able, because of data protection, to say anything. So,
but you wouldn't want, well, it wouldn't be a good thing, would it, if people that left the council and had a grievance didn't feel able to express that, because it could highlight a genuine problem?
I think we need to have a very robust exit interview process with people when they leave to find out why they've left, and hopefully improve our organisation as a consequence of it. I mean,
it's more than an interview with council officers. It's also telling the media or telling other people if necessary.
Well, I mean, if as I said, these are negotiated agreements, and it's not always us that wants confidentiality. So, I mean, I personally would not stop someone from speaking if they wanted to speak. It's not,
Okay, right, and finally, what about complaints against councillors? They still are largely considered in secret, even once a prima facie case has been established. Justice has to be seen to be done, doesn't it?
Yes, I think so, and I think it's up for consideration. We have a openness and transparency working group. It's a subgroup of the Corporate Governance and Standards Committee. It's chaired by R4GB's councillor Deborah Seabrook, and that's going to be one of the items for consideration, where we'll be going through every aspect of whether the council has a choice about whether to do something confidentially or openly, and challenge all of those assumptions.
And Councillor Seabrook, of course, was the one that discovered this payment of the right to buy money, I understand.
Councillor Seabrook raised an issue in October of last year, and said, are we in danger of having to repay anything this year? To which the answer was no, because we've got an extension. Obviously what happened in subsequent years wasn't discussed, but yes, she noticed that there were, the issue in late last year. Okay,
well, Councillor Bigmore, thanks very much for giving your time. You've got I think everyone hopefully will understand that, you've got a tough job there, whatever their political colour. And I'm sure, especially during the pandemic, we wish everyone at the council well. And I wanted to say actually that, some of the good parts of the Guildford Borough Council have been exposed by this pandemic, because there's been a great deal of community spirit led by the council to address some of the problems the pandemic has produced.
Cool, thank you. I think the council is rightly proud of the way its officers have stood up to this, and the whole community, to be fair. And on behalf of the council, I'd like to thank you and your other colleagues in the media for helping get the messaging out there. And I think, Guildford has weathered this pandemic, pretty well, and that's a real testament to the whole community.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.